Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Buyer Enablement Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Feedy. Thank you for tuning in and joining us. Yet again, we're bringing somebody today that I have no doubt is going to bring you a tremendous amount of value. Lifelong sales person, lifelong sales trainer, author. How many authors do we have to have on this podcast? We're having another author. Selling from the Heart is the book that we're going to be, I'm sure, talking about a little bit at least in this podcast episode. But I just met Larry. Larry was introduced to me by himself. He's a friend of Todd Capone, who was recently on the show, and he reached out to me through LinkedIn after it was done. He's like, "Hey, we should connect. We should have a conversation." I said, "You know what? We should have more than a conversation. We should record that conversation. We should produce that conversation in a podcast. Let's just do that." And he said, "Heck yeah, let's do it." So here he is. So Larry, introduce yourself to everybody. Give us the background on who you are, what you do, and what you're going to be bringing to the plate on this conversation here.
Oh, this is so good, Josh. And you're right. We're taking the conversation to a different level. So this is awesome. From a proactive reach out to a podcast. This is freaking awesome. I'm the best-selling author of the Selling from the Heart book, the podcast, but let me preface it this way. I'm a big believer in this, and this has been taught to me through mentors after mentors, is this: you never know somebody's backstory. You never know where somebody's come from until you really know their backstory. As simple as it sounds, it's profound, because we always look at where people are at and we conjure up stories of where they're at. And whether those are, hey, gosh, I'm jealous of this person, or I want to be like that person. Let me just take you, if it's okay, Josh, just a quick backstory, and then we'll bring it up to why Selling from the Heart. We all good?
No, you can't do this. This is going way off script. Of course, you can do whatever you want to, Larry. Come on. There's no rules.
I'm just here. I'm on for the ride, but no.
Yeah, there's no rules in this podcast. You can do whatever the heck you want to. Let's do it. Let's do the backstory.
So I'll give everyone my quick backstory. I spent almost 30 years, 28 years in what I think is one of the most brutally competitive sales channels that are out there. I sold copiers my whole life, Josh.
Oof.
Absolutely commoditized, brutalized, whatever words you want to put it in. But you know what? I made it my own. And so just, I grew up, I've grown up north of downtown LA my whole life. I spent my whole career selling copiers and software in that channel. But what was really interesting along the way, and I always say that's a sales channel full of broken promises and busted dreams. But what I did is, throughout my whole journey, I was always recreating myself. And here's why, because I'll take everyone back, and this really kind of is the evolution, though I didn't know it, of Selling from the Heart. Is my first year in sales was the tail end of 87, full 1988. So now I've fully dated myself. Yes. And that's okay. But when I grew up in sales, there was no internet, there was no cell phones, there wasn't all the technology that we have today. And I want to reference a book to help kick off the story. I'm a big fan of Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's one of the very first books I read, besides How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins. And there's that book was written, 1937, and I think it's still relevant today. The whole concept around this, and I took this to heart in the late 80s. It's about building relationships and changing the way people think. Now, back then it was face-to-face and the phone, and that's all it was. And if you stunk at both of those, then you're going to have a very, very tough sales career. But if you succeeded at it, you're going to have a very great and fulfilling sales career. Well, if we fast forward today, the same thing's going on. It's just the tools are different to build the relationships. I bring this up because I saw this firsthand in sales in the late 80s. I was starting to ask people, what do you like? What do you don't like about salespeople? I had a very inquisitive mindset, for the simple reason is I grew up with a father who was a rocket scientist for the United States Air Force. My dad was a true rocket scientist. He had a PhD in aeronautical physics from 2 Ivy League schools before he could legally drink. Yeah. And that's what I had to grow up with. I share this because I got into sales because I wanted to get into sales. against my parents' better judgment, because still to this day, they can't stand salespeople. A tip of the cap to Todd Capone on this one, because Todd says salespeople find ways to screw things up. He said that loud and clear on your podcast. And I share this because I took the weight of having to grow up with a father who was a rocket scientist and who was a complete brainiac, who hated sales. And I got into sales for one reason in the very beginning, to prove to my dad that I can actually be a sales professional.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's that?
Did part of it was part of it just teenage angst, just wanting to do something that of course your parents would think is a ridiculous idea?
Oh, well, totally agree, because so I hated it's difficult, right? I love my parents, but I use them to help bring my story out, because I had to grow up in a household that pushed education on us left and right, and I rebelled against it. I hated everything about high school. I think I got a 2.1, Josh, in high school. I went to college to appease my parents, hated every bit of college. I think my last semester I got 2 incompletes, and I probably got a couple D's, but guess what? I got a college degree and I was able to wave that around, right?
Yeah.
But and then here we go. I graduate, and then I tell my parents, guess what? I'm going into sales, as my dad's jaw drops.
Yeah, I'm sure he was just absolutely thrilled with that.
Oh, you know what? Yeah. Still to this day, I love my dad, even though it's kind of a weird relationship, being a brainiac and me being who I am. But nevertheless, he still to this day has a hard time believing I spent my whole entire career in sales. But here's how I made it unique. It was the way I was brought up, and I'd like the listeners to really key in on this, because there's going to be some people that'll say this: our relationships aren't that big of a deal, right? But guess what?
Not my listeners. I hope my listeners aren't.
No, but you get what I'm saying. There's a lot of them out there that get into sales for various reasons, and rightfully so. I'm not here to say why somebody gets into sales or why they don't get into sales. But if you ask people, do your clients matter? Do your customers matter? However you refer to them, of course they're going to say yes. Then I can layer in, well, do relationships matters? Somewhere in between this, and they're going to say yes. And then my response is, what are you doing about it? What are you doing to double down and grow those relationships? And the reason why it's so near and dear to me, and I brought this out my whole entire sales career, and I'm bringing it out to the forefront and selling from the heart, is I'm a big believer. Salespeople are products of how they were raised. They are products of the environments that they have grown up in. And I'm not a doctor. I don't bring any psychology to this or anything like that. I always tell people I got a PhD from getting the crap kicked out of me selling copiers in downtown LA my whole life. But what I do bring to the table is this: if you invest in your relationships, if you grow those relationships, if you nourish those client relationships, you'll be able to collect on those. And I say we're products of our environment because that's how I was raised. See, my dad traveled a lot throughout my whole growing up. And I was raised by my mom. Now I have 2 sisters. Most of my cousins I hung out with were females. Y'all get in the picture. Yeah, so yeah. I always say and I'm open. I don't hide anything. I always say I got more female tendencies in me than male, but that's what makes me me. But what I did is I brought the motherly instinct that I was raised by my mom, and I brought that to sales. And I was made fun of, right? I was laughed at and all that. But what people started to see, and it didn't take long, were the rock solid relationships that I built in a sales world where there's so much lack of trust. They don't believe anything you say. They're skeptical about everything. They saw instantaneously how I built deep, meaningful relationships. And still to this day, I tell people, Josh, this stuff's not rocket science. It's really not. It's the art, and it's just, I write about it in Selling from the Heart. And it's why I brought it to the forefront 3.5 years ago. We must give a rip. We have to give a rip about ourselves, our career, our clients, because when it's all said and done, that helps us take care of ourselves and our family.
This is why I wanted to have you on. This is your hazing being on this show, because I think this is all too much for me, man. We talk about hunting and sales. We don't talk about touchy-feely stuff. I hope everybody that's listening to the Buyer Enablement podcast right now is saying, no way, this guy, what's he talking? No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. You are totally right. It's all about relationships. We need to care about the people that we're working with. We need to care that we're delivering on our promises. We need to care about the results that we're going to be able to deliver for them. There's a lot of caring that goes into sales. And I think you're totally right, and you're onto it with it right here. We use these terms like hunting in sales. We use very aggressive terms in sales. And some of those aggressive terms that we use, I think, subliminal or subconsciously pull us into this mindset where we don't care, or we feel like we're wrong to care because there's no caring in hunting, right? There's no caring in hunting down a new lead at all. Where's the caring in that, right? But we need to do those things. Now, what's fun, background in copier sales. One of our next guests coming up is going to be Dale Dupree, the sales rebellion himself. Former copier warrior was his former business's name. So that'll be interesting. I'll be able to riff on that a little with him based on what he hears from you here as well. But this is great. Now, this is the Buyer Enablement Podcast. So anybody that's not clear right now listening to this going, what does selling from the heart have to do with enabling buyers? Let's start out right now by just diving into how caring for your customers does, in fact, enable them in their journey with you.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it's about being intentional. I really think that it's being intentional. When I say intentional, we can throw whatever words want to come out of this. It's about intentionally listening. It's about intentionally being there for them. And this might go against the complete polar opposite of what a lot of people may think. But again, it's just bringing to the forefront that I'm here to help. I care. I may not have the answers, but the more that I uncover, I'll tell you what, I mean, and here's something to throw at your listeners. And this is what I believe this to this day. I took it throughout my whole sales career, even in how I work with salespeople and sales leaders today, is this: the more that you bring to the table, the more that you help somebody grow, the more you will grow with them.
Yes.
The more you learn about your buyers, the more you earn from your buyers. Think about that one for a second. But it's not about you and your products. See, we bring to the table this mindset, like you go back to hunting, right? I got to hunt this down. Right? I got to get this appointment. I got to nail this appointment. Well, how many times do you really enter that conversation in the right mindset because you already predetermined what that outcome's going to be? Gosh, I can't get off the phone, or I need to get this appointment because of whatever. We can fill in the blanks. But how about if we went into that conversation with the pure intent of, I'm going to open up a conversation. It's Larry Levine having another conversation with Josh. And I bring to Josh some ideas instantaneously, or I bring to him things that I've been working on with people very close to him in similar positions and how I might be able to help. Don't know, but if you're open to it, we can further peel this back.
100%. Listen, one of the things that a lot of sales professionals struggle with, I'm in the SaaS space, right? So most of my sales efforts and my team sales efforts are done via a screen share, whether we're using Google Meet or Zoom, whatever you might be using, it's via screen share, and we're walking them through the product that we have and all of that stuff. And one of the challenges that I see a lot of people outside of SaaS, but especially in SaaS, when they're over those Zoom calls, is they don't want to ask too many questions in the beginning. They feel like by asking these questions, they're wasting the prospect's time. That prospect, they want to see whatever you're selling. They want to learn more about your business, right? Why are you asking them all these questions? And it comes right down to what you were saying is, if you don't fully understand their business and their problems and where you can actually help them, then what good are you selling them anything right now? I mean, then you truly are just selling them on something. And we don't want to sell anyone on something. We don't want to just like randomly sell you this because we want to make a deal. We don't want to make a deal like that. None of us should want to make a deal like that. We should only want to make a deal when this is actually going to be beneficial to your business and to you achieving your goals. And the only way for us to be fully understanding that this is going to actually do that is to ask questions. And sometimes it's a lot of questions. But hopefully when you're asking those questions, you're tying back everything as you go through those discussions with your customers and prospects, right? About here's why I asked you those questions, because right here, this is a great fit for you because of this answer. But right here, this isn't a great fit for you. This portion of it doesn't actually achieve this piece that you were asking for. This goes back to Todd Capone, right? More transparency. Be willing to be open about where your product or service is a great fit and where maybe it's going to fall a little bit short, because they're going to find it out anyway. I think that this is where, in my head, at least for many years now, I've stopped calling myself a salesperson. I call myself a strategist. I feel that the word strategist is more fitting of what I actually do on a day-to-day basis with clients and prospects that I'm talking to, is really just trying to help them understand what we do, understand what their actual pain points are, and help them align with some strategies and services and products that'll help them get there. And sometimes those are my products and services. And sometimes I'm pointing them in the direction of someone else, right? Because I know that I'm not going to be a fit. But that's what I'm there for. If you're going to spend 30 or 60 or 90 minutes with me, at least when we come out of this conversation, I want you to feel like you learned something that you can actually move forward with. Does that resonate with you?
Oh man, I mean, there's so much to unpack on what you just said. I'm going to start this way. The more you know about somebody, the more you grow with somebody. And the only way you can really get to know your buyer and the issues they have is through asking great, engaging questions. But here lies the difficulty is I'm going to take a different spin on this, but we're all going to bring this together. But follow along with me on this. Is I believe there's even more to unpack in what you just said. And it goes to I'm a big believer that we have to do the inner work. We got to really work on who we are. I always say the inner heart work, HEART, the heart work is the hardest work we do. Yeah, it's a spinoff of selling from the heart. But if we fail to work on ourselves, it really messes with this outer game called sales. Why am I saying this? Because if you lack self-confidence, if you lack believability in yourself, if you lack believability in your message, and you have low self-worth, boy, let me tell you, Josh, it freaking comes out instantaneously on the phone. Thus, right? That's why we hide behind scripted questions. And now I'm not here to dog scripts, because I think scripts form foundations by where we can make those our own. But when we ask the simple, basic questions, guess what you're going to get? Simple, basic responses that have been canned from ever and a day from the buyer's point of view, because they're expecting it. 100%. My opinion. But if you really want to get to know somebody, you really want to get to know their issues. I took this forever and a day was this, and that's keying on this, for those that are just pounding the phones, I'd say for those all in sales, is this: the more comfortable that you can make somebody feel, the more comfortable they will share uncomfortable things going on in their office. I'll peel that one back. The more comfortable I make Josh feel, whether that be on the phone, whether that be in an email message, whether that be in a video message, whether that be in a Zoom call or whatever video platform you all use to communicate, the more comfortable I can make Josh feel with me by asking questions that solicit, why, or really scratch the well below the surface. Guess what will happen? I can almost guarantee you Josh will feel so comfortable. He will share things that are going on in his office or in his life that he probably won't share with somebody else. But what happens is we ask just enough questions to get a response that we think we're going to get, that all of a sudden we pounce into, I have a solution for you, or goes right to a next step. To me, one or two questions I ask Josh, I really don't know Josh. I don't know the issues going on in there.
Yeah.
But if I can scratch below the surface, if I can dig well below the surface, and I say well below, and it's when you can get to the core, and guess what? The core is the heart. And when you can get to somebody's heart and tug on that string, tug on an emotional heartstring, and they go, They got me. They know exactly what's going on. You can hear it in their voice. You can see it in their eyes. You can see how they, if you're on video, you can see how they push up in the screen and get straight up. You know when you're there, but you have to have the confidence and believability in yourself. And you have to ask great, engaging questions. If you don't, you're going to get the typical responses that most people in sales get.
And you don't want those, right? It all comes down to caring. When you ask the right questions, it leads me to believe that you honestly care about my answer. And if I know that you care about my answer, now I start to trust you. And trust is the foundation for everything.
No trust, no sale. And here's something that to layer on top of caring is salespeople today. You have to sincerely give a rip, and you got to care about the things they care about. You can't fake it. Because when you fake it, you get exposed as an empty suit. And that's the last chapter of Selling from the Heart. There's enough empty suits out there that are faking their way to success. However they conjure this up in their head.
Yeah.
But deeply caring about somebody, that comes to the forefront.
Yeah.
And that's why I say this, and today in sales, and it's as apparent today as it's ever been. You've heard that expression, we all have, Josh. Hey, Josh, you know what? Don't take it so personal. It's only business. Well, guess what? Business today is personal, people. It is 100% personal. My opinion.
I'm glad you said that. Honestly, that's the next direction I was going to go. You just read my mind, or I read your mind. That is literally the next place I was going to go, because I just had an experience recently. I think that anyone that takes their role in their organization seriously, especially any business owner, it is personal. It is not business. It is personal. Whether or not what I buy from you works out for my business, that is going to personally affect me, right? You have to see through their eyes on the other end. How is this actually going to affect them? Is this going to help them? Because this is absolutely personal. And I don't really know where that whole, this isn't business, it's, this isn't personal, it's business sort of statement came from. I don't know who coined that, because I don't know when that ever made sense. Yeah. When did that ever make sense though? When was there ever an opportune time to say this isn't personal, this is just business? Like, no, this is personal. This is personal for somebody. I can't think of a situation where it wasn't personal for somebody, right? So it's crazy to think about. One of the next guests that we're going to be having on the podcast is going to be Dan Tyre from Hubspot. Anyone that's listening to our podcast, any of our previous episodes, knows that I've probably mentioned him on every episode that we've had up to this point, and I've been waiting for the moment to have him on. But one of the things that he's famous for is using the word help, right? I'm not here to sell you. I am here to help you. Now, that phrase, if that's not backed up by genuine empathy and actually caring about whether or not you're there to help, then it means absolutely nothing, right? And I think too many people look at that and it's too easy. It's too easy to say, no, I'm here to help. I'm here to help. Well, but are you really? Are you really? Do you really care about the outcomes? Do you care? Because if you care about the outcomes, if you really care about me and you're empathetic to my needs and my budget and all the timelines and all that stuff, then yes, you're here to help. But if you're just saying you're here to help, then what are you here to do? You're not helping.
Oh man, now okay, Josh. Now I'm fired up because
here we go. Soapbox, get up on it.
Because all of chapter 6 is Selling from the Heart is being servant minded. And part of being servant minded is you have to have a giver's mindset. You have to be willing to give. Those that give will get back tenfold. But here's the deal, and this has been ingrained in me forever. I mean, I've been giving back out in the community forever and a day. It's what lights my fire. But here's what's interesting, because I was tested on this a long time ago, Josh. And so my messaging back to people all the time is this: hey, Josh, I'm here to be a resource and a service to you. Please let me know how I can help.
Mm-hmm.
And I have literally had people reach out to me and say, hey, I'm having an issue. I'm having this. Can you help? I said, yeah, sure. Let's hop on a call. And they freaking blow their minds because they go, you know what? Most of the time, it's just it's words, right? No, it's actually my lifestyle. People will sense that I'm here to be of service. Well, in other words, if you're going to say you're here to be of service to you and you're in sales, then I'm going to ask you, are you a servant?
Yeah.
Or are you just saying it because?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm a big believer. The heartfelt movement that I'm bringing to the forefront, this is lifestyle. This has been sorely needed in sales, my opinion, for a long, long, long time. If relationships matter, then I'm going to challenge everybody who's watching or listening to this. Then bring your heart, sincerity, and substance to the forefront. Give a rip. Show that you care. Back the words, live it, walk it, talk it, and breathe it. Buyers are a whole lot smarter than you think they are. If you're not here to love on your clients, if you're not here to love on your marketplace, if you're not here to love on your community, I'm telling you this right now, somebody else will.
Man, that's the hot take right there. That is without question going to end up in one of the micro clips. I'll tell you that right now. And I hope if someone's listening to this on the podcast or watching the full length video when this is done, hit rewind. Hear that again. You need to hear that. I want to add to that. I want to take it a little differently, okay? Now, I want people to feel good. I want people to feel good about this as well. One of the reasons that we're doing this podcast, and some of our other guests have discussed this, there's nothing wrong with being a sales professional. Larry, you knew this. You knew this. This is why you wanted to get into it. There's nothing wrong with it. However, for whatever reason, so many people still view this as a dirty profession. And it is not. It is not a dirty profession unless you make it a dirty profession. It absolutely can be a dirty profession. I've seen plenty of people do that. We're not talking to those people. We're talking to the people that want to elevate sales as a choice of profession, because you can absolutely elevate yourself in the mind of your customers and prospects by delivering on your promises, by setting the proper expectations, by doing the right research before you have the conversation, and by properly guiding and educating them in every moment that they spend with you. And I think that honestly, a lot has been changing in sales over the last 10 years. I'll date myself a little bit, Larry. I'm 40 years old. I just turned 40 this year. I started working when I was...
I remember 40. It seems like it was long. It actually was a while ago.
40's been sort of fun so far. I don't know, but...
You know, I always... sorry, but I have to say this, right? You always ask somebody, right? He's an old father figure to me. Guy just turned 80 years old a couple days ago. And we're talking socially distanced. I'm in his backyard talking about life lessons. Literally, Josh, this is just a couple days ago. And he says, You know something, Larry? He goes, I think 80 is the new 60.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's so good. So Josh, now the 40 is the new 20. I'm 56. Yeah. So if we subtract 20, then I guess 56 is the new 36, I guess.
I don't know about that. I don't want to go back to my 20s, Larry.
Neither do I. I can't relive my 20s.
I'll tell you one thing. My 20s were the worst years of my life. My 30s started out horribly. I had a midlife crisis when I turned 30. Turning 40 felt like, okay, well, whatever. I'm 40 now, right? But regardless, I started working when I was 8 years old. I started working professionally as a salesperson when I was 15 years old. And, you know, that wasn't long after you started getting into business as well, honestly. I mean, it wasn't too far behind you there, but we share something. I barely passed high school. I think I actually had a lower GPA in high school than you did. I didn't go to college. I had no desire to go there. And I think that many people, when I was getting into sales, many people were getting into sales for a very similar reason. We were all kind of the recluses, right? We were all kind of the people that just didn't fit in the normal areas that society said we were supposed to fit in. And we just kind of considered ourselves rebels. And because we're rebels, well, then we must be doing something wrong. We must be doing something illegal. We must be like breaking some rules here, right? And I think we embrace that early in our careers. But I think what we find, and so for any younger sales professionals listening to this, good news. There's good things ahead, because what you find when you go through your career is that you actually become an expert in what you're doing. If you stay at least in the same kind of vein, right? You become an expert. You learn how to become an expert in your customers' businesses, and you learn how to properly advise them and to be seen as more than just a salesperson, as a strategist, as someone critical to their business, even though you're not part of their business. And when you get to that point, that's when you learn that sales is incredible. Sales is absolutely incredible. You can go anywhere in the world and make a living because you know how to sell. And there's not many other professions in the world that can literally just pick up right now today, leave their house, go across the ocean, and find a job, find a way to make money the next day. Sales can do that. Sales is incredible, right? But to do that, you have to be an incredible salesperson. And that's where it comes back to the trainings that Larry is talking about right now. You're not an incredible salesperson if you're not empathetic. You're not an incredible salesperson if you don't ask the right questions. Curiosity is the one thing that I always look for when I'm making a sales hire. Is this person curious? Because if you're curious, you're going to want to ask questions. It's not going to be questions just for the sake of asking a question. It's going to be a question because you're genuinely interested. That's what you want to be doing, right? So maybe if you're listening to this, you're not in sales. Maybe you're thinking, I'm in marketing and I'm sick of watching those salespeople drive the BMWs every day. I want to make more money and get into sales, right? Well, all right, let's start with this. Are you curious? Do you really care? Do you want to know the backstory from people? Are you going to ask those questions? It's going to get you really far. But it's, look, the sales has changed so much, but what I wanted to ask you specifically about, so what year did you write the book now?
2018.
Okay, 2018. So this was pre-COVID.
This is
my assumption.
Yep. My assumption is that a book like yours probably picked up a lot of popularity post-COVID. That's my assumption. Can you talk to me about what you're seeing with your kind of what you're talking about in this book, if people are getting more responsive to it now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had no idea. So the podcast came out before the book. The Selling from the Heart podcast came out April of 2017. The book came out September of 2018 and was doing really, really well. And then all of a sudden, COVID hits. And I remember as plain as day, I shared this with my wife and I shared it with my podcast partner. I said, this is the time to double down on selling from the heart. Watch what will happen. And in the span of the last 9, 10, almost 11 months now, the book has done, the message. I still pinch and poke myself, Josh, because when the podcast came out and the book came out, I expected 200 or 300 people to buy the book and listen to the podcast, friends and family and the pity people, right? Mm-hmm. Did not know that a movement would happen. And what was interesting is if we go into the early parts of what we all went through in 2020, I was hearing words like heart, sincerity, compassion, genuine, real. All of this all of a sudden become mainstream where it wasn't before. And I go, it's hit. Yep. For one, if you don't have a heart in going through what you all did in 2020, and I say get out of sales, point blank, just freaking get out of sales. There's something that I wanted to key on that you said, and quite often through our time together, you've used the word professional, sales professional. It's called a profession for a reason. That means that we have to do the things to become self-educated and self-learners. We have to be willing to do the things that professionals do. They're called professional athletes for a reason. And it's why throughout Selling from the Heart and the message I'm bringing to the forefront is there a massive difference between a sales rep and a sales professional. It all starts with a no excuse mindset. It all starts with holding that mirror up in front of our face, because mirror never lies. The only thing that lies is a person looking into the mirror. That's who lies. And the sales profession is a great profession because guess what? Without sales, things fail to happen. Money moves through our economy worldwide because we sell things. Be proud of what you do. Be proud of your profession. And here's what really concerns me, more so than anything else. Ask salespeople how they would define salespeople. Mm-hmm. And listen to the responses more often than not. Guess what, folks? You have the ability. I'm a big believer in this. Perception is reality. Perception is reality, as weird as that may sound. You have it in you, right? I share with people all the time. I knew what my secret sauce was a long time ago. My secret sauce is right here.
Yep.
Everybody has their secret sauce. It's how willing are you to bring that secret sauce out that makes you to the forefront. But guess what? That's what's going to drive you in a profession that's sorely lacking professionalism. Do the things that professionals do and rise above. That means you got to change the perception of the marketplace. You got to change the perception of the buyer. You got to change the perception of the client. And that means you got to double down on yourself, and you got to double down on your confidence, your believability in yourself, your messaging, and you got to consistently do the things that most people in sales will not do. And that means that if something happens and you screw up, it's not somebody else's fault. It's your fault. You got to take ownership for where you're at right now in your career. It's not your sales leader's responsibility. It's not your company's responsibility. Those are freaking vehicles along the way.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility to hold yourself accountable, to raise yourself, grow yourself, and become the best professional you can become. It's you. Go ask any professional athlete, the cream of their crop, the 1%ers that are out there. I'm a big baseball and basketball geek. So look at the LeBron Jameses of the world, the Michael Jordans of the world, Kobe Bryant, God rest that guy's soul. They worked harder on themselves than anybody. And here's what's interesting. It's the personal accountability that they've taken along the way.
Yeah.
Sales professionals hold themselves personally accountable to grow. And they wake up every single day and they ask themselves, what do I need to learn today? Yeah. And then they take that and they make their clients and buyers smarter every time they interact with them.
You're killing me with this. You're killing me with this. This is why I love sales, but this is why sales is one of the hardest professions that anyone can go into. What you're describing right there is a sales professional. That's why I use that word, sales professional. That is somebody that trains every single day. They hone their craft every single day. Sales professionals never sleep. They never sleep. And I don't want to promote this whole hustle mentality.
No, it has nothing to do with it. And I agree. It has nothing to do with hustle mentality.
It has nothing to do with that. But every day I'm thinking back on every call I have, every conversation I have. I'm looking at tomorrow. I'm looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the pipeline. I'm wondering how I can do better than I did. I'm looking for ways to learn more and to get better in places where I'm not good already. This is something that can be very taxing on your soul, can be very taxing on just your strength, your mind, your marriage, your everything. I mean, I would say that divorce rates of sales professionals have got to be close to the divorce rates of founders of companies, which, if you didn't know, people that found companies have the highest divorce rate in the world, which is absolutely terrifying to me because I'm both a founder and a salesperson.
Don't worry.
Hey, my wife say, Josh, so mad, but I can say I'm happy. I'm well past that stage. So
yeah, I'm happily married. My wife loves me, and she deals with all of my quirks and all of my troubles. But regardless,
you need to find someone that will, is what I'm saying. But it's a tough thing. And what I will tell you is, I knew that your book was going to take off because what we have done as professionals in sales in the last 9 months, last 10 months, depending, I guess, last year and a half, depending where you are. You might be listening from China right now. I don't know. But what we've done is we've grown comfortable with the uncomfortable. And, selling from the heart, when you read that almost makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm a manly man, right? I'm in sales and I do manly man things, but I'm one of the most emotional people you'll ever know, Larry. I mean, I
have to play on what you just said. I have to, because you just said manly man. Guess what?
Yeah.
If you really, really, really want to be that manly man, show your heart.
Yeah.
Because showing your heart's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. I believe it's a sign of masculinity.
Larry, I can't agree more.
I was just crying in my office the other day with one of my employees, literally crying in my office. Look, sometimes days just get to be too much. Sometimes the successes get to be too much. It doesn't always have to be a negative thing coming in. But what I wanted to comment on, where I was getting at with this, is that the title of your book, I think people that were listening to this podcast maybe came into the episode thinking this was going to be a very touchy-feely, build you up sort of podcast, right? And though I think it absolutely has been a build you up, my favorite portion of this podcast so far was the tough love that you gave the listeners, Larry. That's the part that really resonated with me, because selling from the heart doesn't mean that we're all going to be, trying to make sure everybody's smiling around us and like building everybody up and just giving them all this praise all day long. No. You're a professional. You need to train. You need to make yourself better every single day. And sometimes we just need to have that kind of encouragement where it's the tough love brought into our lives to help us be better and do better by our customers. It's my favorite part of this podcast so far. I hope everybody paid attention to that.
No, I appreciate it. And this is why heart's so important to me. I'll share a quick story is our signature moment, our podcast, we ask all of our guests the same exact question. And then afterwards, our podcast is very similar to yours. Why I love having this conversation, because you just don't know where it's going to go. And that's the same with our podcast. But in the very beginning, we ask every single one of our guests, Josh, and it's the question, they know it's coming, is what does it mean to you to sell from the heart? And we have now 3.5 years later, we have heard some really great emotional responses. This, Josh, was probably the best. And this is what signifies why I'm bringing the message to the forefront in the way I am. We asked this guest, this is probably a year or so ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. We asked this guest, what's it mean to you to sell from the heart? Josh, this was the response. I'm shortening the response because it was a jaw dropper. This person said it's hard to sell from the heart if your heart is broken.
Ooh.
And think about that for a second, everybody. How can you bring your heart and lead and serve from the heart if internally your heart's broken and you got chaos going on and all that? It's hard to do that. You can't bring sincerity and substance to the forefront. Why I'm a big believer and why I wrote the book the way I did in the first 3-4 chapters is, if you fail to work on your heart, if you fail to work on the inner game, if you fail to really uncover who you are and why you exist, and you fail to reflect every day upon yourself, if you fail to really become self-aware of who you are, really dig in deep and get to know who you are, I'm going to tell you sooner or later it comes back and it bites you in the butt. And we always talk about being heart healthy. Well, you have to be heart healthy in sales, and it's not just cardio heart healthy. It's emotionally heart healthy, and the baggage that we all have to deal with. We got to learn how to deal with all that baggage, and nobody's perfect, and we're far from it. We all have things in the closet. Lord knows I have them all. I came to grips with a lot of it as I was writing Selling from the Heart. But we mask it in sales. We shove it off in the closet. And then whether you're beating the phones all day as an SDR or a BDR, or you're all the way up to an enterprise sales professional, if you fail to work on your heart, sooner or later, something happens and you get exposed.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is, through Selling from the Heart, is work on not getting exposed as being an empty suit. And that's all.
Yeah.
I love that. It's very full circle. I mean, you started this episode talking about how you don't know the true story behind somebody until you ask, right? And many times people just don't ask. Whenever somebody brings up that kind of an analogy, I immediately think of Robin Williams. For whatever reason, Robin Williams is the first person that comes to mind every time, because he was an incredibly talented human being that brought so much joy to so many people. And I don't know that anybody ever asked him, how are things, right? Because you just assume, well, if you're bringing this much joy into the world, then your world must be incredible. It must be incredible to be in your head. It must be incredible to be you. And until you ask, you don't know. And sometimes you find out too late. It's important. It's important to have those conversations for sure. All right, look, I'm going to get going way too emotional here if we keep going on this one. Plus, I told you I try to keep these at 30 minutes and I fail every time.
I know. I asked prior to recording this, I said, how long are you going to go? And he goes, it goes like 30 minutes. I'm looking, I'm like going, we have enough for a couple podcasts.
I mean, I told you I try for 30 minutes, but I fail every time. And yet again, here I am failing again at keeping it to 30 minutes. So I'm going to put you on the spot with one quick thing. This is a brand new initiative that I'm starting at my company, Sales Reach. What I've noticed is that a lot of the guests coming onto this podcast are authors. A lot of them have some really great books. We've been toying around with the idea of starting what we call the Sales Reach Library. Basically, what we're going to be doing is just creating a portal where our followers can purchase books that the authors that have been on the podcast have written. I'm hoping that I can attach some sort of discount code. We can talk about that later or whatever, some way for you to know that it's coming from a Buyer Enablement podcast listener. But can I count on you to put your book into our library here soon?
100%, without a doubt. I mean, I'd be honored. So thank you very much for asking. And secondly, if the book can help one of your listeners come to grips with who they are, then I'm all in. So don't even have to worry about it.
This is going to be great. Todd Capone is going to be he was the first person to commit to it. Yours will be the second book that we're putting in. It's going to be a lot like Oprah's book club, but probably 100 times bigger. No, I'm kidding. But regardless, but just like Oprah, I'm hoping everybody gets a car by being a better salesperson and earning it. But regardless, I'd love to do that. I want to have you included in that. If anybody listening is looking to connect with you in any way, what's the best way to connect with you? Are you a LinkedIn guy? Are you a shoot me an email guy? What's the best way?
Well, you can find me all over LinkedIn. You can find me active on LinkedIn. It's just Larry Levine 1992 is my LinkedIn address. If you want to find out anything about Selling from the Heart, you can go to sellingfromtheheart.net. We have the website broken down. So if you're a sales professional or a sales leader, there's pages accordingly. You can listen to the podcast as well, which has now gone video. So you can find Selling from the Heart on YouTube. You can find the book on Amazon in book format, Kindle format, audio format. If you're a texting type of person and you don't want to do what I just mentioned, then just open up your text app, text the word heart to 21,000, and boom, you'll get all the links that I just mentioned.
Look at that. You've got all kinds of techie ways for people.
Not bad for an old sales nerd, huh?
Wow. I don't even know how the text to reply thing right now. That's great. I love it.
Neither do I. I don't know how it works, but I've seen it work. So
it just comes through somehow. Yeah, it's the magic of the internet. Yeah, I love it. Larry Levine, author of Selling from the Heart. It has been an honor having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for setting aside some time for me and the listeners. To you, all the listeners, thank you again for tuning in. I can't thank you enough. I hope that you're finding more and more value from every one of these episodes. I'm hopefully getting better and better as a podcast host every time I do this. It's definitely not in my skill sets to be a pro podcast host, but that's the role that I've given myself in this world, so I'm doing it. So thanks for tuning in. Make sure to tell your friends, even your family, why not, about the podcast. Get them to tune in. Maybe they can find some value in it. Hit the follow button so you get alerts when we go live with new episodes. And please, 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 your comments are always appreciated, especially on LinkedIn, where we're trying to spread the news about this podcast and help bring more awareness to the good things that our guests are doing. So thanks again for tuning in. Larry, thanks for being on, and we'll see you all in a couple weeks here. Bye.